Sports opinions are served up every morning by Mike Golick and Trey Wingo, 5 to 9 on ESPN Radio 103.3 FM, ESPN.
Welcome back into Free to Play right here on 103.3 FM ESPN as we discuss esports locally, nationally, internationally, however else you want to spin it. We talk about esports all over the place. Coming up at 10:50, we'll dive a little bit more into the international side of things for esports. But at 10:30, we do it each and every Sunday. We go over the best plays of the week. But now we have to go in a little bit more local area, my neck of the woods for the most part, as we bring on now Scott Wegner of the Fort Worth Vaqueros, the National Premier Soccer League team. So, Scott, how you doing today, my man?
I am doing very well. Appreciate you having me on, Kevin.
Awesome. So you came out. You reached out to me because playoffs for the eNPSL is starting up soon on Tuesday. But before we dive into that, the Fort Worth Vaqueros, they have an esports team first. I know they're a soccer team. Obviously, we free tickets here and there. We hear about that. Let's go see the soccer team. But they also have an esports soccer team where they play FIFA. For people who don't know what this is, how would you best explain it to them?
You know what? It's kind of crazy because I had no idea what this was going to be going into it. So we'll take you back a couple months, I suppose. The eNPSL, the league that the Vaqueros outdoor team plays in, was canceled due to coronavirus, obviously. And we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then the eNPSL teamed with Virtual Pro Gaming, and they came up with this eNPSL league. And there's 16 teams scattered throughout the country that play. And it's crazy. I've never seen anything like it, so I'm a relatively new to gaming kind of guy. But it's literally 11 guys for the Vaqueros, each playing a specific position, taking on 11 guys, elsewhere throughout the country. And it's a little bit of chaos, but it's a lot of fun, and I've had a great time watching the games and broadcasting them as well.
Obviously, here locally we also have FC Dallas, another soccer team, but they have their own eMLS side of things. But here in the NPSL's neighborhood, the gameplay is a little bit different. It's instead of the traditional FIFA where it's like 1-on-1, 2-on-2. You guys go all the way up to 11-on-11. So all the teams across the league, and many of them, they actually represent other NPSL league teams like yourselves. You have to you also commentate. So you commentate on this, and is it different from traditional FIFA in a lot of ways, or is it kind of like the same thing, just adding more players to the mix?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's kind of similar to FIFA, I suppose. Growing up, I grew up on the early FIFAs, FIFA 96, FIFA 98, so it's obviously come a long way since then. But yeah, it really is. You forget when you're doing the broadcast that it is 11v11 because there is a certain fluidity to the game that of good players one-on-one would be playing. But again, then it is different because you have guys that have to communicate, and instead of the computer, moving a guy a certain way, it actually has to be done by the player. So it's definitely a little bit more interesting, and I think to a certain extent there's more turnovers and a little bit more chaos within the game.
And from what I've seen, the little tidbits that I've seen, it looks seamless. So I will say that the broadcast looks great. It sounds great from you guys. I know you do it on Facebook Live, and it looks seamless. So I want to applaud you for the good work that you've put into this. And I know it's been a lot of effort on your part, especially with COVID-19 coming out and kind of causing a little mayhem here and there. But I just want to say that you guys have done an awesome job with what you've had so far.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, and I could not do it without my partner and my very good friend, John Carney. He is I actually drive out to Fort Worth to do the broadcast, and we do them from what we call Studio JC, which is essentially this incredible setup that he has in his garage. He is the brains behind all of it, behind everything. He's the technical director. He's the engineer. He literally does everything for it, and I'm just there because I have the play-by-play experience because I've been doing play-by-play for years and years now. He's taught me a little bit about the technical side, so I'm learning it a little bit here and there, and I've set up a couple of the broadcasts, and I do some of the editing of videos and things that we play on the broadcast. But, again, I could not do it without my friend John Carney, and he goes by Carney. He's an absolute legend. He's a great guy, and again, I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for him. And I honestly, I truly don't know that I would do it if it wasn't for him.
Awesome. Carney, getting the shout out right there out there for you. But I want to talk more about you, Scott, because you mentioned it right there. You have a play-by-play experience, but how did you happen to fall into the role of Fort Worth Vaqueros eNPSL commentator? How did that happen? And just talk me through that whole experience.
Well, there's a really, really long version that starts with me going to college in Wisconsin, but the shortened version is my wife and I moved down to Dallas a few years ago, and I was really looking to get into working with soccer team just because soccer is my passion. I played growing up. I played FIFA my entire life, so that kind of led to the eNPSL. But I met the owner of the Vaqueros, Michael Hitchcock, through a mutual friend of ours, and I got involved with the Vaqueros. And my first year with the Vaqueros, I literally just helped out doing social media, moving signs, getting them set up on the field, things like that. And then the second season, I wanted to really take the Vaqueros to the next level, and I approached Hitch, and I said, I have play-by-play experience. I've done college soccer games. I've done college volleyball, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, hey, let's do it. If we can make it look good, let's do it. And with the help of Carney, we did 2 seasons worth of broadcast. So then the coronavirus hit, and the NPSL was canceled, and the eNPSL came about. And I learned that they were going to be streaming on Twitch. And I had kind of just gotten into learning a little bit more about Twitch, and I started watching streamers and things like that. And I was like, I approached Carney and I said, hey man, what if we loosen the reins a little bit? Because we do a pretty traditional broadcast for the outdoor game, and we have a little bit of fun doing these eNPSL games. And, we broadcasted the Vaqueros Facebook Live. I've never done any eSports play-by-play before. He's obviously never done it either. And I was like, let's just have some fun and see what happens and see if people like it. And we get a decent amount of viewers during it, and we get really good feedback from it as well. And people have said that they enjoy their Tuesdays and Thursday nights spent with us watching the eSports team. And last week we actually had it was interesting. So the Vaqueros had their first game of the night. It was a forfeit from Las Vegas. So we decided to just go on air, and I ran essentially an NFL Red Zone style broadcast where we were flipping between 3 games that all of the teams that were ahead in the table from the Vaqueros, and we had to be our own engineers. We had to be our own, making sure that all of our volume and everything is good. So it was definitely an interesting experience, but that's kind of the I guess the not so shortened version of how I got into the eSports broadcasting. And now I love it, man. I'm super into it. Like I said, I'm constantly on Twitch watching streamers and kind of seeing what they're doing and what people find entertaining, and hoping to maybe start doing my own thing in the somewhat near future.
That's good to hear, man. I'm glad to hear that somebody from a more traditional sports background is actually getting more involved in esports. You don't see that too often, and I'm glad to see that somebody else besides me is hopping onto this esports train and really taking off with it. And I know you said an NFL-style red zone commentary over multiple different games. That is insane. How crazy was that night for you?
It was really interesting because we didn't find out about the forfeit until seriously 10 minutes before the game was set to kick off. So I'm texting with the owner of the Denton Diablos, who I know, who's also in the esports, in the eNPSL. So we've had our very own little derby here, which was really fun. Vaqueros won, of course. But I texted him. I was like, hey, can we broadcast your game? And he goes, yeah, of course. We'd love to have you do it. And then I reached out to a couple of other teams, and I was like, hey, we're kind of doing this like flip through thing that we're going to broadcast on our Facebook page. Are you guys cool with that? And nobody said no, so we just kind of went with it. But we literally had 3 Twitch streams up on the middle monitor that we were using, and I was flipping between them, and we were flipping our cameras back and forth. So it looks like a somewhat professional setup, but it's literally just Carney and I pushing a couple buttons to flip things through. But it was hectic, man, because you're trying to learn all the different players that are playing and follow the screens, and I'm watching 2 screens at one time, and I'm trying to bring the commentary that's on the actual screen. And we have a 3 TV set up that we're using so that we can see, what's on our preview screen, what the viewer is actually watching, and then what it looks like from our vantage point. So it was hectic. It was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope that the people that were watching enjoyed it as well.
Kevin Correa here on 103.3 FM ESPN on Free to Play, the best esports show out there on the air right now, talking with Scott Wagner, the Fort Worth Vaqueros. Scott, I mean, from what it sounds like, you guys have a pretty, I wouldn't say amateur setup, because it looks professional, it sounds professional. It's more like a DIY setup, if you will. But specifically, when I talk about the team now, you guys are currently sitting in, as of this recording, which is, it's a little, I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit. It's a recording. We're before the weekend, got to get things settled. COVID ruining things a little bit here and there. But Vaqueros currently in third place at the eNPSL standings. And so, is this team actually good? Like, for people who don't really know, how do the Fort Worth Vaqueros match up to the other teams in the league?
So they actually match up really well, and they were out of the 16 teams, like you mentioned, they finished third. Tuesday night they take on the FC Baltimore Cristos at 9:30 and 10:15. But the two teams above them in the table, the Muskegon Risers, they were the first team to beat the Muskegon Risers, so that was kind of cool. They took down Denton in one of the games, and they drew in the other game, and Denton sat right behind them. Honestly, it's really been interesting. It's kind of like it's like a real soccer team. It's like a real soccer season. I'm a Premier League fan, so anybody can beat anybody on any given day. We just saw Chelsea lose to West Ham in the Premier League, and you wouldn't have thought that would have happened. So the Vaqueros have had some losses that they were to teams that they were better than, and the record shows that, but they've also beaten the two teams ahead of the table from them as well. So it's really crazy. And the other tough part about this is you've got guys that are playing. A lot of these guys are pro players. They play for pro clubs. So it's hard sometimes getting your best 11 organized for Tuesday and Thursday night when they're playing in other esports leagues as well. The Vaqueros missed. There's a gentleman on their team. His name is Just a Martian, and he missed a ton of games, and he was their leading goal scorer. They also have a guy on their team. The Vaqueros do. He had the best name, I think, in all of the eNPSL. His name was Dope Killa.
Yep, that's pretty dope right there.
Right, and he missed a ton of games as well. So the Vaqueros were missing their two leading scorers for, almost half of the season because they're playing in other pro leagues as well. So, but it's been so much fun. At the beginning of the season, I didn't know what to expect, and at the end of the season, I become such a fan. They had a tough night where they lost two games, and I was literally I was down. It hurt my soul a little bit to see that happen to these guys.
I mean, it's hard as a commentator. I've worked with Chuck Cooperstein here, who is the voice of the Dallas Mavericks, of course, and he kind of has the same mentality you do sometimes. And I'm just going to peel back the curtain a little bit more. He gets very frustrated with the team away from the microphone. It's just, I understand it, so don't feel too down on yourself about that, because we all become fans at some point of the teams that we kind of follow, and that's just the nature of the beast. But this team, the Vaqueros, currently third place again, 19 wins, 4 losses, 7 draws. How do you expect they'll perform come playoff time?
Well, first off, I will take any comparison to Chuck that I can ever get. He is an absolute pro, so I'm just going to take that as a compliment, even though you didn't even mean it that way. I'm just going to
feel free.
It anyway.
Take it, run with it.
Right. Now you got to repeat the question again. What was it? Sorry, I wanted to toot my own horn there a little.
No worries. How do you think this team will perform in the playoffs?
Man, that's a tough question. I think that they're going to get through round one when they take on the Cristos. They've had a pretty good success against them. Once you get past that first weekend, all the teams, the top 5 teams are so even between FC Buffalo, Muskegon, Denton, and Central Florida. Not to say that there can't be any upsets in the first weekend, but those top 5 teams, they all match up. They've all beaten each other. They've all had draws with each other. So I think, long answer shortened up here, I think that the Vaqueros have a pretty good shot to make it to the final, but that FC Buffalo team is 23-2 with just 5 draws. I mean, they're the best team that we've seen so far, or that we've seen this season. But I think that they can make the finals.
All right, that's a good point. All right, let's kind of wrap this up a little bit now. Right here on 103.3 FM ESPN, Kevin Correa here on Free to Play, talking to Scott Wegner of the Fort Worth Vaqueros. Now, is this the best time to watch the eNPSL, or eNPSL? Acronyms are hard for me. Or should they wait until next season? Obviously, they're going to want to watch it now, right?
I mean, it's been so much fun, and there's no guarantee for next season. I have talked to our GM and our owner, and they said that this is something that they want to continue. I would suggest everybody tune in Tuesday night at 9:30. You just go to facebook.com/Fort Worth Vaqueros. Check out the broadcast. It's me. It's a friend of mine, Carney. We're having a great time. We don't take ourselves super seriously during this because we didn't think that it would be, we didn't want it to be a traditional broadcast. We like to have fun. Honestly, we talk about movies and we make fun of the names. There was actually a guy, if I can tell you a quick story here.
Go ahead.
There's a guy, his name was Texas Legend, and he was playing on a different team. And he actually dribbled the ball out of bounds past the end line, and he was wide open, right? So it was just a missed touch. And, I gave him some grief on the broadcast. I was like, if you're going to have a name like Texas Legend and you're going to be playing a Fort Worth, Texas team, you got to do better than that. Well, it turns out he ended up having a goal later on that game, and then in a game later on in the season, he torched us for 2 more. But, again, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We like to have fun at the broadcast. And, yeah, I would definitely say tune in. Us and the Muskegon Risers are the only teams that are doing actual broadcasts like this. So it's really been fun. And if you're a fan of esports and you like to support the local teams, you have the best of both worlds right here.
That is perfect, and that's what this show is all about right here on Free to Play. Of course, you can follow the Vaqueros on Twitter at Fort Worth Vaqueros. You can also go, again, like he said, go to Facebook, find the team right there. Really easy. I promise you it's not that hard. And enjoy Tuesday night at 9:30 as playoffs get started for the eNPSL. And Scott, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it, all right?
Kevin, I appreciate you having me on. This is a great time, and I hope we can do it again sometime. Maybe when we're talking about the championship.
Oh, yes. That'd be a championship show. I'm going to put it in the books. Let's do it, Scott.
Awesome, man. Take care.
You too. Take it easy. And there he goes, Scott Wegner of the Fort Worth Vaqueros. Of course, their playoffs starting up, and I always love talking local esports more than anything. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next coming week. So I'll keep my eye on them. We'll probably throw some best plays of the week on there as well and have some fun with it.